Good morning. This is day 89 of the Ukrainian resistance, and welcome to the Mediacentru Ukraine. Our day today, we will start with a briefing of Roman Slaston, Director General of the Ukrainian Agrarian Business Club Association. This association unites the largest agribusinesses in Ukraine and plays a crucial role, and the issue of agrarian market is also very important. Roman, good morning. Unfortunately, I cannot hear you. Let's wait a little bit. Roman, can you hear me now? Good morning. Yes, I can hear you very well. So let's get started. My first question is as follows. What is the current status of Ukraine's agrarian sector? The situation is not the best one, which is obvious. I cannot really say that the current status of Ukraine's agrarian market is normal because we have the war raging in our country. Nonetheless, agribusinesses continue operating. They have already sown 12 million hectares of land. These are spring crops. The lion's share includes grains, also barley, sunflower, and some vegetables as well, like potatoes and other vegetables. This year, we also have to compensate for those crops and vegetables that are usually grown in the south of the country. In Kherson region and Zaporizhia region, we used to grow enormous quantities of vegetables. For about 1 week, the sowing campaign will still be in the works. There are some obvious challenges, shortages of funds, and there's also a deficit of diesel fuel. This is an enormous challenge for multiple agribusinesses and agrarians. They don't have enough diesel fuel to be able to engage in full-fledged operations. They might have enough diesel fuel to finalize their sowing campaign, but not for further operations. Those agribusinesses that are located closer to the battle areas are struggling as well. The same is true about those territories that were temporarily occupied because there are still remnants of mines and explosive ordnance. There are still airstrikes. There have been about 5 to 6 missile strikes. These are the ones that have been highlighted in the media, or we've had some cases of tractors blowing up on mines. In many cases, the tractor drivers have sustained injuries. Fortunately, most of them are alive, but unfortunately, we also have some fatalities. Roman, how much Ukrainian grain do we have in silos, and what are the prospects? Will we be able to export this grain or not? Or maybe we will have to dig everything into soil. Exports are going up slowly but gradually. At the beginning of the war, we had upwards of 20 million tons of grain to be exported, excluding the stock that we have in place for domestic consumption. Last year, we had a record harvest, 86 million tons of grain. And for domestic consumption, we need only about 19 million. So you can only imagine what the difference is. Before the beginning of the full-fledged war, we were able to export about 44 million tons of grain, but we still have a lot in our country. We have been able to export about 300,000 tons. In April, the situation improved because we were able to export via the western border with the countries of the EU member states, almost 1 million. And in May, as per the recent data, most likely we will be able to export about 1.5 million. The minimum plan is to export at least 3 million tons. This is without the deblockade of our ports. There are multiple options for export avenues, railroad transportation, ground vehicles as well, because there are multiple simplified procedures being implemented at the Polish-Ukrainian border, and hopefully this will allow us to reach exports amounting to 3 million tons of grain. If we achieve this number, then our agri market will have a good future. It's not really true about other grain crops and sunflower. What about the rest of the world? I'm talking not only about food security and shortages of food products. I'm talking about our traditional markets, and will we be able to potentially enter those markets that the Russians will lose as a result of their aggression? We are doing our utmost to maintain our positions on those markets that we have been exporting both agricultural products and some other products as well. But the situation is quite challenging because the lion's share of our produce was exported via ports. The logistics has changed completely because we are exporting more to Europe and via Europe right now. There's a big internal market in the EU member states, and our products are replacing those products that used to come from Latin America, for example. They are reformatting their operations towards Asia, but our agribusinesses are exporting to Asia, Africa, the Middle East. In April, we loaded a large ship with 80,000 tons of corn heading to China via the EU ports. So as you can see, we are doing everything within our capacity to retain those markets. Who and how is trying to resolve this problem? I'm asking about the state and its role, our international partners, and initiatives of private businesses. Can you tell us more about who is doing what to find a resolution to this problem? We have enormous unity among state actors, international partners, private entities, and governmental agencies in different countries are lending a helping hand as well. In Ukraine, we have a special coordination body, Coordination Council, established at the Ministry of Agrarian Policy, headed by Mr. Mykola Solsky, the Minister of Agrarian Policy of Ukraine. And this Coordination Council includes the main agencies and market actors. The purpose of this Coordination Council is to craft new opportunities. We're also doing a lot of work with the EU member states, and they have crafted their own action plan entitled Ways of Solidarity for Agrarian Products from Ukraine to EU or via the EU. There are 20 specific items in this action plan detailing how we can ameliorate our logistics, ground logistics, river logistics, and railway logistics. What should Ukrainians brace themselves for? I'm asking about prices. Do we expect any shortages of food products? In terms of basic foods, we will have plenty of them because we have enough grain, we have enough oil crops. In terms of animal husbandry, the situation is quite okay, not what we expected at the beginning of the war. In terms of vegetables, there were certain problems, and this is something that everyone experienced firsthand. Prices went up, which was related to our losses in the south of the country, Kherson region, Zaporizhia region, because these two regions produced a lot of vegetables in the past. With regard to tomatoes, bell pepper, and eggplants, we might see a decrease in the supply, but agribusinesses in other regions of Ukraine, like Odessa region, understand these losses and they start sowing more of these crops. We should also expect imports from some European countries because in multiple countries there, vegetable growing is quite big. So hopefully this year, this way, we will be able to compensate for increased prices. There will be an increase in prices. This is a proven fact because costs are soaring, in particular fuel costs, which is a big component, and logistics as well. With respect to logistics, it's quite expensive now. We don't have sufficient ground vehicles or other means of transportation to provide for required logistics, and the distances went up as well. What is happening to the land market right now? Before the war, the land reform was initiated. Won't the war become an obstacle for the finalization of this land reform? The land market is not operating as such. Why? Because we don't have full-fledged registers in place. We don't want to conclude any agreements without registers because it might turn out later that these agreements are void. We want to avoid raids and some other negative phenomena, and that's why this process was put on hold. I think that it's a smart and astute decision for the time being. That said, we can see that there's an avid interest in purchasing land, in investing in agriculture, even under the current conditions. I believe that once the war is over, once the martial law is over, this interest will pick up even further and we will be able to breathe new life into our market. My last question is as follows. What kind of support do agribusinesses need from the state? We all are very grateful for the support and program implemented by the government. I mean bank loans at privileged interest rates, at zero interest rates, supported by state portfolio guarantees. The problem in the past was that no one wanted to use a mortgage that was not secured. Because if you have a silos, for example, then it could be destroyed anytime. The government assumed all these risks and the state guarantees provided immense support for agribusinesses. They took out loans amounting to upwards of 20 billion hryvnias, and that gave impetus to the sowing campaign in the first place. Agribusinesses had enough money to purchase seeds, fertilizers, and other supplies. If it's possible to raise additional funds from international partners and donors to continue this program into the harvesting season, that would be great support as well. As I have already mentioned, we haven't reached the same exports as before the war. Agribusinesses are not always able to sell their products to have enough money for fuel, salaries, transportation of the harvest that we expect already in July. Therefore, there is a need for financial support, loans, until we are able to reach exports on the level of 3 million tons per month. Thank you very much for the useful information. We had Roman Slaston, Director General of the Ukrainian Agrarian Business Club Association, with us, and he expanded on the current status of Ukraine's agrarian sector. Our next briefing will take place at 11:30 a.m. We will have founders of the Plech Oplech Shoulder to Shoulder Charity Foundation with us, and they will tell us more about